Welcome to our first podcast episode and our very first ever guest, Daryl Smith,
Thank you very much.
Director of UFV International. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Been at UFV for 2.5 years now. Before that, I was a faculty member. My introduction into post-secondary education was as a biology instructor. So I spent about 10 years teaching biology. And there was a time when I went on sabbatical for a while, and then when I came back, I noticed in my classroom that there was a sharp increase in the number of international students in the classroom. So from the biology department, we probably had 2 or 3 international students a year to about 30%. And so I went to the international office and was asking, what's going on here? And they said, well, there's the sciences are now a prerequisite for some of the other courses, and so there's many students coming in. And so I was wondering how we could facilitate the international students in the classroom. And so we got into some discussions, and they said, hey, we're hiring for somebody to be the intercultural initiatives coordinator. And they were looking for somebody with some background in teaching, who'd been in the classroom, but also had some intercultural experience. And so I said, that sounds like a really interesting position. So I got into that position, and I applied and got the job, and ended up doing that for about 3 years, where I was working with faculty and working with students about that transition to post-secondary education, how to facilitate that transition. And then I looked at, got in some other roles around internationalization and that type of thing, and then eventually ended up at UFV a couple of years ago. So a little bit about my background.
Quite the career shift, I would say.
Quite the career shift, that natural progression from microbiology to international.
What were some of the things that you saw as an educator that made you think, I'd really like to facilitate this shift, be more easy for the international students?
Looking at the way that things were done in the classroom, and understanding that there needed to be a change in the way things were done, or a change in the students that were coming to the institution. So how do we look at this from an intercultural understanding? So how do we better facilitate that understanding from the faculty side as well as from the student side? So things like understanding writing styles, understanding participation, the hierarchy in the classroom, where some students, international students, found it very strange to answer questions in class, whereas domestic students might have been used to that their whole time coming through the system. So I was very interested in that. How do we look at this from a different perspective? And also in the institutions that I was involved in and still am, there's many students from many different cultures in the classroom. So whether international students or not, we need to be able to teach to a class that has that brings many perspectives into the classroom. So it's kind of the initial interest in that area.
I know you mentioned difference in writing style or class participation. Do you think that maybe differences in pedagogy from east to west are some of the biggest factors that contribute to difficulties that international students face?
100%, yeah. That academic transition is very difficult, and it's not just well, you do it this way and we do it this way. It's a cultural basis for many of the practices that come in. So they're not just, okay, we're going to be thinking of a different style. It's changing the way you're thinking almost in order to facilitate that change. And so that's definitely comes into play when we're thinking about that transition to the new classroom.
As the director of UFV International, you must have numerous students coming in with different issues, right, that they need assistance with. What would you say are some of the main ones that we haven't touched on yet?
When we look at that student journey, I often tell the students that we're glad you're here, very welcome that you're here, but this is going to be tough. So there's a lot of difficulties, I think, that come into that transition for everyone. So this is going to be tough, but don't worry, it's tough for everyone. So one of the things that the research shows us that when a student is having difficulty, they feel that they're the only one, and everyone else is understanding this and having it. It's such a smooth thing for them. Yeah. So, but having that, telling the students, no, you're not the only one, and then telling the students there are many people here that will help you with this transition and help you with those issues. The key to it is, as a student coming in, is I think an aspect of maturity. And when I'm looking at maturity, I'm thinking it's not that I'm mature enough to take on all these problems by myself. It's maturity to say, I need help now, seeking that help, and then coming in and getting that help. So the different things that we see at UFV International range from a homesickness to difficulty managing a schedule, sometimes financial difficulties, sometimes relationship difficulties. Oftentimes a student is there's something going on at home and they're missing it. So there's many different aspects of that comes in to play here. When we look at it from an academic standpoint, so there's an academic standpoint, there's also a non-academic standpoint as far as the transition goes as well. If we look at the student as a whole, holistically, having that understanding that there's also a medical, there's also social relationships outside. Sometimes there's a spiritual aspect. Sometimes there's a food. What am I going to eat? Where am I going to eat? How am I going to cook my food? So there's lots of different aspects to that. So we handle all sorts of different questions around the as far as the international student that comes into our office. But yeah, it's an interesting. We have a saying, hashtag never a dull moment.
Yeah.
There's always something interesting happening in the office.
Thank you for the insight. Thanks. We really appreciate that. And I'm curious if you have a lot of FEI students in particular that come into the international office looking for assistance with these types of maybe integration difficulties.
Yeah, integration difficulties. I think that's so we kind of break it down to transition, settlement, and integration. I think UFV or FEI students have, I sometimes get that mixed up, but FEI students have several advantages when it comes to the academic transition. So when you've been at an institution that has the curriculum and has the same curriculum, same blackboard, same learning management system as I'm referring to on Blackboard, then there are fewer types of those issues. However, there's other things that come into play as well, and it's that integration piece, I think. So once the student comes in and is oriented and say, hey, this is great, everything's going so well, and I met some new friends. For every student, I think, there's a little bit of a dip. And then it's that, okay, how...
From the social aspect, you mean?
From the social aspect, I think from the missing home aspect, the thrill of it is gone. And so we see students coming in for those type of reasons for sure. But to help with that, at UFV International, we have things to support that transition, that integration. One of them is called STEP Cafe. That's Settlement Transition Engagement Program. So it's looking at different aspects of the student experience. So everything from 1 week will be on immigration and study permits and renewals and the post-graduation work permit. Another week will be on careers, education. So we'll bring somebody in from the institution that works on that. Some will be on medical, so getting help and the rest of those things as far as transitioning that integration phase for that long term.
So how can the Indian students find out about the STEP Cafe? How are they generally informed about these types of things?
There's a few things we use to engage with students. One is email. So we send out email. Some students read their email, some students don't. So there's another app we use called iCent, and a small ICENT, and it talks about all the events that are coming up, such as STEP Cafe. There's another one called En Route, which is something we do. We take students, busload students to Whistler or to downtown to see a hockey game and those type of things. So that's one aspect of staying connected with it. We also have Instagram, so a lot of posts on Instagram. So it's connecting with the things that are available, I think, and that's another aspect of connect with the things that are there and connect with the if you know I would like some social interaction, there's things there. It's just finding it and trying to connect with it, taking advantage of the resources that are there for sure.
Would you say, from your experience, that the Fraser Valley, India students are more prepared than other international students coming into the international office or making that shift to UFV Canada?
Yeah, I think when we look at that, the education, the academic aspects of the student journey, there are definitely some advantages. So when you, as I was just mentioning about the curriculum, so understanding the difference in a Western curriculum, such as continuous assessment. I've heard from some of my colleagues and some of the students that in a system, some systems, the final exam is the most important thing. You study for that final exam, you pass the final exam, you pass the course. In our system, that final exam might be worth 30%. So if you pass the final exam with 100%, you'll get 30% in that course. And a bare minimum pass is just above 50. So getting the 3% is not going to do it. And throughout the term, there are quizzes and there are assignments and they're all worth part marks along the way, and it's continuous assessment. So having a student understand that and that in a curriculum base that's at FVI is very important. So I think, along with all the other adjustments that need to be made, the academic adjustment is pretty smooth. Similar curriculum, similar courses, similar instructional style. Even the classrooms are set up in a way that facilitates that smooth transition to the academic. So I think that's one advantage around the academic. The other advantage is you're coming with 100 of your friends at the same time. So having that social aspect of it built into it, I think is a big advantage. Um, you also have the support of past students. So there's that connection, and so the network, the network, and we're going to be meeting with some alumni when we're here, which is great. But having that, so my friend who went last year did this, and this was helpful. So I think there's nice things around that support as well. So I see many advantages of that system. We support all students in that transition, but to have 2 full years of that preparation, I think is a big advantage. It takes out at least that academic transition that needs to happen.
Sticking to the topic of FVI students making that transition to UFV Canada, you recently hired one of our graduates, Akash. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like working with him and having him in the international office?
You might have seen a big smile come on my face when you said his name. It's been a pleasure to work with Akash. Always pleasant smile coming into the space. He doesn't directly report to me. He reports to our associate director Walter Foreman of International Relations. He works in study abroad. However, I've had him on some of our selection committees. So when new hires are coming in, and he brings a lot of enthusiasm and expertise. I think that was part of his background as to what he studied. So he brings in enthusiasm. I think a good perspective, knowledge into the work he's done. Yeah, he's helped us out with a few things on the trip I'm currently on. He was there to help us with some of the technical details around coming and the procedural details. So it's great. He's a great advocate for the school. He loves FEI and his experience here, and we really appreciate him in the office.
Thank you for that. We're really proud of all of our graduates, all of our alumni. So it's really, fantastic to hear about the contributions that they're making. Um, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to speak a bit about the relationship between India and Canada and how that's affecting our students that are wanting to make that transfer to UFV Canada. So, as we know, India and Canada have had a really long and prosperous relationship, but there are some things that have happened politically, and the scenario's been affected, the relationship's been affected, and students and parents have their doubts. So, can you tell us, can you address some of these top questions that the students and the parents have, like the new immigration laws and what they mean?
It's been a lot of transitions and a lot of new things have come up in the last 6 months, particularly since January 22nd at 8:30 a.m. when the announcement first came out. So um, there are new regulations around immigration, refugee, and citizenship Canada that have recently come out. Um, uh, I think the message that I'd like to give out as far as that is that Canada is still open. UFV is very open and welcoming to the students that are coming. The students from FEI are very well situated, set up, positioned to do well, and UFV is there to be that support. The overall reason for some of the changes, growth in the international student population in Canada was I wouldn't say rampant, but was increasing quite quickly. So I think the estimate was within a year, it'll be 1.4 million international students in the country. There needs to be some kind of regulation around that, and so that's why the government stepped in. It's also to, I think, overall, ensure that institutions were providing the supports that were necessary for the students. University of Fraser Valley, UFE, has those supports, and we're I think encouraged that overall the student will be better supported, and so that there's more protections and there's more understanding of what the student needs are in that experience with that traveling to Canada. It's got to be for a parent's perspective. That transition's got to be very difficult. I have 3 children, and they're in university now, and they're in university um, within one of my daughters goes to UFE, the other one is not too far away. My son's in Ontario, so having them go away from home, that's a difficult thing. But to having them go to a different country, I can only imagine. So I see those changes recently as being something that's going to benefit the student in the long run and provide, in the long and the short run actually, and provide a lot of the supports. What the IRCC is looking for is institutions that have counseling support, that have students who graduate at a good rate. And I can say that our students from FEI do that. Their graduation rate is very good. Their GPA is very good as they make those transitions to Canada. So having students graduating, mental health supports, how many supports for that integration phase that we talked about. We have Academic Success Center. We have other student life going on. So there are many things that IRCC is looking for that our institution is able to provide.
You touched on the topic of the Canadian housing crisis. Can you paint us a picture of what's going on for those students that maybe are lacking a bit of context about this?
Housing is an issue in Canada where their affordable housing is definitely at a premium. When we look at the major centers like Vancouver and Toronto, I think that's definitely the case. As you know, we're in Abbotsford is our main campus, and so there is. It's the first question I ask students: where are you living? How's it? How's the living situation? How difficult was it to find housing? And in our city in Abbotsford, it's difficult to find housing, but it's available, and so students are finding it. Especially, I think with networks like we were talking about before, with Fraser Valley India students, there's a lot of possibilities for connecting with things like that. It is a real thing. And UFE is doing a few things about it, specifically in 2025. We hope to have a new dormitory with 400 new beds. So we'll have a more capacity to engage with students to support them there. Our present facility, Lallam to Baker, has about 200 beds, so that would almost triple our capacity as it is right now. Yeah, so we have also recently hired a coordinator that we call them an advisor settlement and immigration that will be working almost exclusively around housing. So helping students to find housing, sourcing housing, making sure that the environment for the student is a good environment, the situation, and that the student's living in as well. So supporting them as far as their rental rights and that type of thing. So yeah, so it's something that I think is a concern, but I think it's something that if we spend some time on, and the students spend some time on, and think about it before they leave. So trying to get some of those things in place before you leave, I think there's some possibilities there.
Any other tips on how the Indian students can be best prepared to handle this Canadian housing crisis?
Looking to where they're living. So some of the students will, you're coming to Abbotsford, where in Abbotsford and where you're going to live. If you're living in Vancouver, and students will tell us they're living in Vancouver, that's probably about 2 hours away by bus. So if you're looking at 2 hours away by bus every day, 2 hours in, 2 hours out, you're going to spend a lot of your time on the bus. Students say, well, don't worry, I'll study on the bus. You're not. Don't.
They underestimate the commute.
It's like it's a long time. So even Surrey's close to Abbotsford, but still about an hour and 15-minute commute. So I would encourage students to look in the Abbotsford region. I think there's certain advantages being there. Definitely look on campus. There's several. Get in early though. If you want housing on campus, apply very early. So there's some possibilities there, but also start thinking about housing earlier, and then connect with us. And we'll point you in the right direction so you can begin to source that out. Find friends who are coming. Again, use your networks. If you have a couple of friends who were here last year and they're moving, or maybe they're moving to a different location and there's a room available, rely on that network as well. So I think it's beginning early and using the resources that are available to you.
What do you think are some of the strategies that Indian students can use to better manage their finances when they're in Canada?
Finances is always a good question.
It goes hand in hand with the housing situation as well.
One of the things that I encourage Indian students to do is before you leave, learn how to cook at least 5 meals. Students, and I'm sure I probably did this too, but let's get a pizza. Let's go out to here. Let's order in. Let's do this. The finances in that, going into those type of expenses, it will drain your finances quickly. It's also not the healthiest choice. In Abbotsford, I'm sure you'll be able to find all the ingredients that you need to make the food. Abbotsford has a very big South Asian Indian population, and so there's markets that are available with all the spices and everything you need to make the food. But look at that. So definitely think about that as far as a budget goes. I think the other aspect of it is a budget. So looking at your finances, and this is how much rent's going to be, and having a realistic expectation of that before you come. So this is how much rent's going to be. This is how much food is going to be. Find out how much a carton of milk costs. Find out how much it's going to cost for these things, and then planning your budget and sticking to it. So I think that's a skill that hopefully students are thinking about before they come.
So essentially being well informed and learning to be self-sufficient once they make the shift over.
That's right. Yeah. So getting on that budget, and then thinking about work. Students often want to work, and
tips on finding a part-time job?
Often students are looking for a career in general. So by the time I finish this, I'd like to do this job. Connecting with our Center for Experiential and Career Education at the beginning is a good idea. They'll have some leads on jobs, but they'll also have some leads on this is the type of job you might want to think about if you're thinking about this career. So students trying to get into the job market for graduation should start thinking about that when they get involved. So as far as finding a job, yeah, the CC it's called Center for Experiential and Career Education. They have some job postings and those type of things that are available, but it's thinking long term of how this job is going to impact the job I might have. And it might not be if you want an office job or you want to run Google or something like that. Getting a job that will give you certain skills that allows you to go to the next job, that allows you to go to the next job and the next job. So other tips, I think having your resume ready for a Canadian context is another thing, and CC provides those avenues as well. So bring your resume to the Center for CC, Center for Experiential Learning and Career Education, and they'll review it. They'll go, okay, so this is what the employers are going to look for as they see that resume, and this is how you might want to change the wording here for the Canadian context for what people are looking for. Another tip I would say is to not take a job that wasn't that was above board. I mean, take a job that's above board. Many or sometimes a student will say, "Well, I can get $20 an hour working over here, or I can get $17 an hour working over here, but this one's cash in hand." Um, the the security and the regulations that are put in place or made available for students are not with the job that comes with the cash. If you're hurt on the job or you need sick days or something like that, that's what you're not going to get compensated for the job that's cash. So get a job with an employer that will. It might be a little bit less money, but it's a better security around the job and more things to take care of. And then look for um, or know your rights as an employee. Know your rights as an employee. As an employee with a job, you have certain rights. And so knowing those rights avoids being exploited in the job and having to work extra hours. And then also keeping in mind that your education is the reason that you're there. The job is a side thing and will get you some extra money, and that's great. But some students will work 40 hours and then try to go to school for 4 or 5 subjects. That balance isn't there. So look for a job that will allow you to put school first as a main priority. Yeah, yeah, prioritizing the education so that you'll end up with that degree or that diploma in the time that you want to get it and do well in your courses.
What about things like looking for scholarships?
So there's some opportunities for scholarships. There's an office that works with scholarships and bursaries. So finding out about those, finding about which ones are eligible for international students. There are definitely some that students can take advantage of. So finding out what the requirements are. Some of them involve volunteering. Some of them involve other things, looks good, which is good for that career. Again, if you want to get into aviation, for example, Abbotsford has a air show, and so some students can volunteer at the air show, and it leads to a scholarship at the end of that. So look for different opportunities that will engage you with maybe the community, and that will lead to some scholarships and those type of things. At UFV International, we also provide scholarships based on GPA. So doing well in your courses is also a good way to secure some extra funds as well. So kind of balance that out. But yes, there's again, it's looking and being informed. I think a friend from here was telling me that Canadians are very willing to help, but you need to ask. So if getting yourself to the point of where are the scholarships? What can I do? How can I interact with them? How can I take advantage of those, or anything around the job that interaction with the system is required.
As the director of UFV International, what's the favorite part of your job? I mean, what are some funny things that happen on a daily basis? What does a day in your life look like?
There's never a dull moment, so there's always wonderful things. One of my favorite things is interacting with students. So sometimes I don't get to do that as much. There's other people who engage with the students, but having the students come into the office and talk to them. One of my favorite things is having met a student here, because I've come over a few times and interacted with the students here, and then having them come to the office and, hey, I met you, and so having that handshake and having that personal interaction. I like it. I assume the student is also appreciates that experience as well. Yeah, yeah, you've got that. You were here, and then you've seen me there. So, my other favorite things is seeing the student that comes to the institution and then ends up leading the institution in a certain way. So having that, they came as a student. I remember you last year, and now you're on student council, or now you're the leading, chairing this committee, or you're working at UFV International. We hire students as well, and so you become a student leader. So seeing those type of interactions are great. That kind of makes your day when you can see those things happening. There's many of those type of interactions that go on during the day. It kind of gives you that extra energy. But again, never a dull moment. There's always interesting things happening. Students coming in, you get to engage with students' lives, and then seeing them prosper and graduate. One of my speaking of graduations, one of my favorite things is I get to read the names at graduation, at the convocation ceremony. So having a reading a student's name that you've interacted with, and as they're going across the stage, you have that little smile or a little fist pump or something that gives you that nice feeling that the students have accomplished this and are moving on to something else. Is great. Yeah, nice part of the job.
How would you describe the overall culture at UFE Canada? I mean, would you say it's a fun place to be for faculty, staff, students?
Think of UFV as the gem in the Fraser Valley. It's the advantage of being small, and I really appreciate the small classrooms with 30, 34 students. As an instructor, that's this class size I taught. You know everybody by the end of the year. You know their names. However, we have world-class faculty and staff at UFV. I'm always amazed to meet some of my colleagues and interact with them and go, "Wow, that's amazing! You've been there, you've done this, and you're coming here." And having that rich environment at the end of the year, around March, there's a student research presentation, and seeing what the students are doing, and as somebody came from the sciences, and I see the students' work, and I'm like, this is amazing. This is would have been breaking edge, cutting edge 4 or 5 years ago, and now you're doing it cutting edge as an undergraduate student. I think is the one of the big advantages is that the student who is interested can work with these world-class faculty and produce some research, get some experience in the lab, or doing as a research associate, and RA for one of those faculty members.
I actually studied both at UFV Canada and at FBI in India, so I
Oh,
can vouch for what you're saying,
great.
especially in terms of the relationship between student and faculty.
Hmm.
Changed to some other countries as well while I was studying at UFV. And honestly, the relationships that I had with my professors at UFV and FBI too were unmatched.
Hmm.
Really a totally different organizational culture you'll not find anywhere else. That
I agree.
the profs know you by name. You're never just a number. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
And it's really, really nice to be able to cultivate those relationships with the people that are forming you in
Hmm.
those years.
Yeah, and as a student, see it from that side. But as a faculty member, they appreciate that too. Able to have that relationship with a student, and then uh, uh, be interested in their advancement, be interested in their what do they do in the future. I spoke to faculty today. It's like, I remember that student. I had that student. Wow, I remember that conversation we had in the hallway that one time after class. So it's a mutual thing. The students appreciate it, the faculty appreciate it, and I think that makes the institution a better place for sure. Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're finding Indian international students are forgetting to do to prepare themselves for their shift to Canada?
So there's a few things that we're seeing that students just forget, right? So, and one of those things is around the medical insurance, and it can be a serious consequences if students don't do that. So every student that comes for their first 90 days, they have insurance called Guard Me. So the Guard Me insurance is part of the fees, and it's a great coverage, and it covers them for the first 90 days. However, within those 90 days, the expectation is that the student will sign up for that medical services plan in British Columbia. And so this is called MSP. And it gets a little confusing because there's actually a third type of insurance that comes in. But what we want students to do is, within those first 90 days, as soon as you get there, as soon as you know your address, sign up for MSP. MSP is the provincial health program that will cover injuries that happen in your after those 90 days. For example, it can be very costly to go to the doctor without that. If you go to the Abbotsford Emergency Center and look at there's a sign on the door that says, if you are not covered by MSP, this will cost about $900 just to see the doctor. With MSP, that's free. So don't forget to do that. It would be one of my pieces of advice, is to sign up for that MSP. The other type of insurance that's available is extended medical insurance, and that covers dental and those type of things. That's covered by your student union. So the student union insurance comes in there as well. So 3 types of insurance. Guard Me will cover you for the first 90 days. Within that time, though, sign up for MSP, and so you can go to the doctor. Even having that MSP after that 90 days, sometimes students will be sick, and they'll not be able to attend class, or maybe they'll miss an exam. And I say, well, go to the doctor, and so you can get some medicine and verification of this. It'd be good to have you go to the doctor. Well, I can't go to the doctor because I didn't sign up for MSP. Those are simple things that could have been taken care of with just that simple reminder to do that.
So essentially, they need to sign up for the MSP as soon as their address is finalized.
As soon as your address is finalized, you can sign up for MSP, yeah.
And if they miss that 90-day window?
There may be some compensation, but it could take a long time to process and all the rest of that. So to be safe, sign up as soon as you get there. The other, about your address as well, we really appreciate it if students will update their personal information in the system as soon as they get there. We sometimes get messages from parents or messages from about the need to contact a student. And if we don't have that information, if the student's information is back to India, then it's hard to get in touch with those students quickly. So sign up for MSP and update your personal information in the system as soon as you have that available.
Students going to UFV Canada, take note right now. Thank you so much, Daryl, for joining us today. I really hope that this provides clarity to some of our students that are going to Canada, making the big leap, their families as well. I hope it gives them some peace of mind, especially with all of the resources that you discussed that the students have waiting for them once they reach there. Any final thoughts?
I've covered a few of these things, but come to us. We have 25 people in the UFV office who are there to support your success. So, and in addition to that, there's probably about 500 people at the institution who want you to be successful. So again, come to us soon. Come to us before there's any issues, so we can get to know you. We're there. We like seeing students at any time. But if you can come to us, I think there's an issue here. So it's a 15-minute fix. We'll work on it if it's a 2-day fix, but it's a lot better for us and for you, for the student, if they can come to us early. I think the other thing is that you're going to be coming into a new environment. Do as much research as you can about that environment before you get here. Interact with the iSent app. The iSent app will help you with those, with connecting with many of the resources that are available. Before you leave, there's checklists in that. So start that research, and then if you need to ask questions, ask questions. There's lots of resources, lots of people who are there to answer those questions for you. So do your research before you leave, and then congratulate yourself for the fact that you're making this big transition. It's a big transition, but it's a great one. I know the benefits of that international education and having that experience, and so having that chance to study in a different environment, in a different culture, I truly believe that the Indian students coming to UFV make UFV a better place. They bring a different perspective. They bring a perspective to the domestic students, and that interaction is key. So we are always grateful for the students that come, and we're looking forward to many more coming in the next couple of months, next couple of years.
That really warms my heart to hear that. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you for your time, your insight, your anecdotes. It's been a pleasure.